Hello, I'm John Hill, Media Services Director for the Detroit City Council. And today we have with us one of my bosses and one of the leaders in Detroit, and somebody whose heart is definitely with the citizens of Detroit that I see day after day in how he takes his time to understand the issues of what's going on with Detroit. We have Councilman James Tate. How you doing, Councilman?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here, John.
Thank you very much. I just want to shake your hand, brother, once again and say I'm glad to have you here on the show.
Absolutely.
Now, Councilman, for those of you people who don't know, let's start out from your beginnings. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Before Councilman James Tate was a councilman, what was going on with James Tate?
Well, James Tate is the product of a relationship, a marriage, a wonderful collaborative, if you will, between Geraldine and James Tate Sr. And I am the oldest of three. I have two younger sisters. And, you know, I just had a regular, if you would call it, middle-class lifestyle, you know, nothing too special. I think the most special thing is that I had two parents in the household that I knew cared and loved for me. They're still together to this day, and that's a tremendous blessing because you don't see that.
Right, I've met both of them. They're both very wonderful people.
Yeah,
very humble too.
I'll make sure I let them know that, and I'll pay you afterwards so I get some extra credit.
Right.
But you know, I was like a lot of young people, you know, had a lot of challenges, you know, a lot of young men. I was that kid who would end up, you know, having to be disciplined after school. You know, I had, actually in 7th grade, I was put back. Right. 8th grade, 9th grade, almost didn't pass because, you know, I played around in school. You know, so when I talk to these young men in the community about knowing how easy it is to allow distractions to get in your way. Right. I'm not just talking about it, you know, just from a standpoint of someone who wants to present themselves as someone who can identify with you. I was actually there.
Yeah, I remember when you spoke at the Youth Connection at their summer learning program, you really went inside and told some things in depth about how, you know, even though I feel that this road was ordained for you to go this way, that you had struggles growing up, that you weren't the straight A kid that went through school and, you know, just, you know, everything worked out for you. You actually had to work to get where you are today.
Yeah, I had to work, and not only did I have to work, but I had other people in my life who worked as well. And I think that's where a lot of our young folks in our community, they don't have. You know, we have, you know, young people today who are basically at their own, you know, wits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever they feel is right, whatever their peers feel is right, they do. And so it is a trial and error, which we all had to go through as kids, but the stakes are much more higher when you don't have that adult who is telling you, yes, this is the right thing, no, this is the wrong thing to do. We have a lot of grandparents raising, you know, children. And not to say that grandparents can't do it, because I've seen some phenomenal grandparents doing a great job. Right. But it does create a different a challenge for a grandparent with the children that are growing up in this particular society, because there's so much of a generational gap.
Absolutely.
Technology is different.
With the computers and,
the social media. Many grandparents, many adults, period. Many parents. Right. You know, they don't understand it, and some of those. Here's the worst part. Some of them, they have their social media, and it's worse than what the children have. You know, you have too many parents who want to be their kids' friends, and that's not the way to go.
No, my parents definitely didn't do that. And something else that when you mentioned that I just thought about, thank God that technology wasn't what it was when you and I grew up.
Absolutely.
You know, I couldn't even imagine, and you know, the access to the internet, the access to photos, you do something and you naturally post it online forever.
And it stays forever.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that. Right. They don't understand it. And you know, there's so many distractions in life, and we have to, as a community, find and identify a way for us, one, to begin to work together for a common cause and agenda, and that agenda should be to do whatever we can to help reshape the lives of our children. But then we have to impart that in our kids. And it's going to be a generation. I truly don't believe that even if we started today and we all got in line, that these children today that we have in this particular generation, they're going to shape up and it's going to change things. It's going to take time because we've allowed decades of parenting to disintegrate and get to the point that it is right now. We've allowed the family to get to a point where in many situations, there is no family.
Right.
You have these kids who are out 10, 12, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning, and parents have absolutely no idea. And that's when we see that kid on the news, something bad happened, and the parent had no idea. Or they say, well, I couldn't do anything, about this kid. That was unheard of in my household.
Yeah. That was on when the streetlights came on. I remember.
Period, point blank.
And if I tried to mouth off to my mother one time, because we moved in a neighborhood that was largely, well, actually, we were only one of the only black families in that neighborhood, and I tried to do something to my parents, which I saw my friends at that time doing, and let me just say, it didn't work out in that black household. That's all it took was one time, though.
Yeah.
But something that I see in you, and in everything in the literature while you ran and everything, it's all about the future.
Oh, yeah.
It's it's not around. So you really reach out and you realize that the kids are. I mean, we need to address our citizens now, and in our age, and look out for our elderly citizens. But we also really got to get a handle on what's going on with our generation. The new generation that's coming up.
John, I mean, we sit here in council some meetings for 6 hours going over policy items, and they're very important. We go out in the community and we represent ourselves in this office, in this city, at various, in various community events. But I'll say none of this matters at all if we do not identify ways to change our children's future. Because we won't be able to do this forever.
Right.
James Tate will not be Councilman James Tate forever.
Right.
No matter who sits in this seat, these are terms. But when we look at what is going on in our city, it is happening in many urban communities around the country. So it's not just a Detroit thing. We have to find and identify a way and see what works, and duplicate it. And those things that don't work, move it out of the way. Or just tweak it. Find out a way. How do we tweak it? And that's why it was so important for me to began working with the Youth Violence Prevention Task Force. Remember, Santil Jenkins and I were the co-chairs.
Right, absolutely.
And it's just an awesome thing to see these kids come in. And, we as adults, we try to identify, crime fighting strategies.
Right.
And we can do that. We use data to show where the crimes are taking place, and we use data to show what potentially could change here. But many times we don't even ask the young folks. What do you believe will change this scenario? What do you think will change what's going on in the with the young folks at this point? And that's what we do in the Youth Violence Prevention Task Force. We make sure that we have young people as a part of the solution.
Right, and let me stop right there so we can take a break, but I want to talk about some of those solutions. I also want to go back, and I wanted to cover this in the first segment, but we'll cover it in the second segment. But your words on why you decided that this was so important that you become a councilman, and what bright spots and what great things you have seen come about, and actually some of the toughest battles that you've had to fight so far for the citizens of Detroit. And so, Councilman, let's take a break at this point, and what we'll do is when we come back, we're going to talk to Councilman and find some more out about what his plans are for the city of Detroit, why he decided to become a councilman, why the youth of today is so important to the city of Detroit and to his heart. So call your friends, call your family, let them know that we have a council member on the show today, Councilmember James Tate, and they can find out all the things that they want to find out about why council members' passion is about Detroit. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Can you hear that? They're calling out for you. But they aren't using words, they're acting up. You remember what it was like. For those of us who had a positive role model that we could reach out and touch growing up, you know the benefits. But what if you didn't? Imagine how having someone like that in your life would have opened up your world. Be a mentor. There are many organizations that do a great job at linking you up with a young person. But you can start in your own neighborhood or in your own family. Just don't wait. Be a mentor today.
If you'd like to contact Councilman James Tate, please call 313-224-1027.
Thank you for staying with us. We're back with the Council View, and we have the pleasure, as I said before, of being joined by Councilman James Tate. Councilman, you know, I think that at the beginning of the show, some of the viewers got a chance to get a little bit of the insight of why you love the youth so much and why they're so important to the society and to Detroit. But what I want to ask you, before we even go into depth there, why did you decide that it was your time, that you needed to become a councilman? What's going on in Detroit, you know, that made you kind of, you know, raise to that occasion?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you ask that question, because I'm asked that on a daily basis.
I bet.
You know, I never in my wildest dreams, as a young boy growing up, thought, wanted, or desired to be in politics, in government. You know, I actually wanted to be a commercial copywriter when I was in college. Yeah, I wanted to be that guy who writes commercials.
That's awesome, commercials and then in the film.
Love it. That's the creative side of me.
And we've seen that side.
Short stories and poems and things. You know, I wanted to do that, and but you know, when I worked, and many people know, I was the spokesperson, the second deputy chief over at the Detroit Police Department. Right. And while I was there, I got an opportunity to see the world in a different light. And if I can dial back a little bit more, I was actually over at Channel 7.
Right.
For 6 years as an assignment desk editor. And at Channel 7, and you know, when you watch the news, it's no secret that, you know, all you really hear and see about the city of Detroit is the bad stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, and granted, you know, you've got to tell what's going on. So if something negative is happening,
right.
you know, you would not be a responsible news agency if you hid the bad stuff. But you also have to talk about what's good, what's positive, what is non-negative. And I love the fact that they gave me some autonomy, especially being the guy who worked on the weekends, to do some of that stuff.
That's
you know,
cool.
So I would go out and have the camera crews shoot, you know, block club parties, birthday parties,
awesome.
Graduations, you know, those things that made people feel good about the city of Detroit.
So you were the reasons for those few stories that were on there.
I was certainly one, and you know, I wanted to thank the leadership who was there for giving me the opportunity. A lot of folks have left. You know, the industry has you know, even changed just in the short time I've been gone. You know, so I saw that, and sitting there with these police scanners around me when I was at the Channel 7, again, nothing but bad news, bad news, bad news. So one day my assistant news director, he came in and said that he was joining the city of Detroit, and he wanted me to come with him to be the communications coordinator. Now, I was the communications coordinator for the city of Detroit for about 9 months, and unfortunately there was a situation that occurred where there was a fireworks shooting in 2004.
I remember
think many people recall that. And over at the police department, there were great police officers who worked in public information, but they weren't media savvy. And they needed someone over at the police department who would be able to deal with the crush of media that would have to deal with. You know, 9 people shot is a big deal. I don't care where you are.
Absolutely.
It's huge, especially on that night. And it was just heartbreaking for all of us. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I drew the short straw, and I was the guy who was shipped off to the police department. You know, again, love the police officers, but I was never a sworn police officer, and that may be a surprise to
some
some folks.
People, a lot of people think that you were a police officer.
Nope, not a sworn police officer, never went to the academy. I was a second deputy chief, and so whenever you see a number in front of a title, second, third, that means that they were a civilian. So I give all the kudos to those men and women who have gone through the battles, who are on the street, because, you know, God didn't make me to do that, but He did give me the heart and the ability to help represent them as best as I can and represent this community. So being over there, I got a chance to actually see victims of crime and talk to them, and actually the perpetrators in some situations. And I saw a lot of that was so senseless. And I saw what really hit me was that the majority of the individuals who were committing the crimes and were suspected of committing the crimes were African American males. These were boys, men who for whatever reason, felt that the only way to address their situation was through violence or through some type of criminal activity.
Right.
And so when you start doing the math, and I talked to some of the detectives who would do the interrogations, and they indicated that there was a common denominator with many of them. Many of them were not much younger than their moms when they were born. Many of them could not read, and if they could, it was at a very elementary level.
Right.
And many of them did not have a positive male role model in their lives. So I started focusing on that even when I was in that transition phase, and that helped shape, in addition to all those other experiences and things that I've gone through as well as a young man, what I wanted to affect when I got on the city council, or actually when I was at the police department. And I said, with all that was going on with the corruption in the city, on both branches of government at that time, we became a laughingstock, let's be honest, around the country. And I know this is the place where I live, the place where I don't plan on going anywhere. My roots are here, my family's here. And I knew that I gained a certain amount of skills over the years, and I have the compassion and heart for the people of this city. I wanted to do whatever I could to try to help the city of Detroit. And what better way for me to do so than to run for Detroit City Council and be here making policy decisions that will help change the lives and affect the lives of the people here. So ran, and I was actually unemployed, and I have a wonderful wife. She did a great job in helping support the family while I was unemployed from the time I left the police department till I was hired here, or by the citizens, and elected in November. And so, without family support, and that is from the beginning to where I am right now, there's absolutely no way that I would be where I am and who I am if I did not have the support of my family. And again, I have to always go back and I say that I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed with what I've been provided through my lifetime, and even to this day. And it would be it would be a sin, I believe, if I did not do what I could to pay it forward and do what I can to help provide what I have been provided and given and blessed with to any and everybody I come in contact with, and even those that I don't know. And I can do that here in the Detroit City Council. There's a lot of challenges now. There's a lot of issues that we're dealing with that, we were not responsible, and I say we as this legislative body who's currently here, not responsible for creating, but it is our job to help get us out of this situation.
Well, I want to say this first of all. I didn't know that, I didn't know that you were unemployed for a minute.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know that and that says a lot right there. I do remember when you were first running, and I had a chance to meet you, then, and actually, we went to school back at Benedictine. And I want to mention the fact that you graduated from Wayne State too. And so you really do love Detroit. You bleed Detroit.
And everything I've done here in the city of Detroit. I was married here, born here over at Community Arts Hospital, which is no longer here. It's funny because Andre Spivey, we found out, Councilman Spivey, we were born at the same hospital.
That's why.
He is a little older than me. But born at
he tested things out to make sure they were okay before you came through, right.
So we, born here in the city of Detroit, my roots are here. I was born or raised over in the Schoolcraft and Southfield area. My wife was born and raised in Brightmoor. Her family still lives there, parents. Northwest is where I've been in my entire life, but most of my family lives on the east side. So I've been able to see east, west, and I had also family who recently passed, who lived in Southwest Detroit, and I attend church in Southwest Detroit. So I mean, literally, this entire city, I feel, is my city. So I have a vested interest in doing whatever I can to help make it better. And that's what I focus on. My theory, or my slogan that I always ring in my head is Better Detroit.
Right.
Better Detroit. Everything that I do, it has to be focused on how am I creating or helping nurture a better Detroit. And that's not to slam anybody who's here, anybody who's left here, because people leave for various reasons. But my goal is to create and do my part to help develop a better Detroit.
Okay, well, on that note, I want to say this too. I didn't know how, I met your wife. Your wife is wonderful. And I met her at a community event that we went to, and she likes to help, the community also. But I didn't know how strong your wife was. And that what you just said is a mouthful.
She lifts me up.
Yeah.
I always say I'm married up, and that's some extra points.
So well, before we take a break, or when we come back from the break, what is the solution? We talked about our young black males. We talked to you said that the fact that a lot of them cannot read or read at a very rudimentary level, if you will. That's frustrating. You want to take things out in anger. That the mothers aren't much older than them when they were born. Right, teen pregnancy, and that they didn't have a role model. So when we come back,
it's almost abandoned.
And so almost yeah. So you're mad at everything.
Yeah.
You're mad at everything. So when we come back, let's talk about how we can engage this problem, what you're doing to engage this problem, and also what are some solutions that you have found, because of the situation. So we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. If you haven't called your friends, your family, your cousins, your loved ones, call them right now. We're going to talk about some of the issues that are really facing Detroit every day. And we will also have a contact number where if you have any problems going on in the city, dealing about the things that we're talking about, or many more things, you can contact the council member personally. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these.
It's all fun and games until someone loses a life. Words have consequences. Think before you speak.
And thank you for staying with us with this council view where we have the Honorable Councilmember James Tate. And Councilmember Tate, we've talked about, I think, some very pressing and some very important issues that need to be talked about in the city of Detroit. And we were just talking about one of the most important, which was what can we do? We have a problem where our brothers, and they are our brothers, our young and sometimes older black males are becoming, doing things that are criminal and acting out in rage of violence, if you will, because of some problems that you found out about back when you were at the police department. What are the solutions? What can we do?
Well, John, it's multifaceted. I mean, it may sound cliche, but it's going to take all of us. It takes city government to knock down these homes or force those who own the properties to knock them down, because now you have the blight issue controlled. If you can't eliminate it, you at least have it controlled.
Can I just right there on that point, I didn't know you were going to go there, but me and my wife went to Florida last year. And when we came, so we were surrounded by, I mean, you just took it to another level. We were surrounded by all these million-dollar homes and all this beauty and all this kind of stuff. We came back in Detroit, and I love Detroit. I'm born and raised here, and Detroit has a lot of great and wonderful neighborhoods. But one thing that I did notice, and I pointed out to her, is the blight.
Those homes, that was one of the reasons why I ran, because I want to affect that. Those are some of the things that I saw as a kid, but certainly not to the level we see now.
No.
So we, as a government, we have to force those individuals who owns those properties to do something with them. That is what's so frustrating, that process. As council, I sit here every Monday and I approve these homes to be demolished. But as council, that is the extent of our ability. We approve those dollars to go towards the demolition. Well, I've said all along, and I've challenged the administration, and this is not a them versus us conversation, but I've challenged and said, look, if we know who owns these properties, why aren't we making them? Why aren't we enforcing the laws that we have, as council, have put on the books? Because there is a separation of power with the charter. So, that is very frustrating for me, because it is choking our neighborhoods. And when you have these young children, boys and girls, who are going out every day and have to look at this stuff, it changes their mentality.
Yeah.
It gives them no sense of hope. and it makes them have to be almost in combat zone mode because they don't know what's lurking behind those those thin walls that have been burned and scorched by the fires. They just don't know. So I think that is part of the solution. We have to do that. We also have to create a climate for economic development. And we have seen that in some areas in downtown. Other aspect of it has to be the community. You know, the community has to understand that because of the challenges that the city has, there are other expectations, more than just your money, your tax dollars. And is it fair? No. You know, when you have some communities where they don't have to do the things that we have to in our city. But we, over the years, and I say we because I am a Detroiter, and even though I've only been in government for 3 years, I am a Detroiter, so I have to take responsibility for the conditions of our city to an extent. We as a community have to take ownership of the good, the bad, the ugly. We can't just say, you know, I am a citizen who is law-abiding and I take care of my kids and I take them to school.
Right.
That's it. You have to be a part of some community organization. You have to know who your neighbors are. You have to get involved with not just your children, but I think mentoring is a huge benefit to help reshape and redevelop a young person. That child doesn't have to be yours, but that child also doesn't have to be some kid you don't know. It could be your nephew, your niece. It could be some young person who's in your neighborhood. They would be more willing to listen to you than they would to some random stranger. So I think we have to use all those things. And in addition, you know, we cannot understate the importance of education and the placing a stronger emphasis within our community on education. You know, I still hear people say that school's not for everybody.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it's not for everyone when we start talking about formalized, you know, 4-year university, but, you know, learning is for everybody.
Learning is for everybody.
And we've got to get to the point where we say, okay, well, if school's not for you, then what? You know, you can't just let that be the end of the conversation. And whether funds are an issue, we need to find, you know, what scholarships, what dollars, what grants are out there for you. And if you have to, you know, if you have to pay some of that money back, you know, that's called an investment. That's called an investment. Amen. Because it will help you get to the point where you can rise above those individuals who are, you know, trying to, you know, gain a foothold over the next person. And then the other piece, you know, we have a large number of, you know, stick with the, you know, the theme of this, young men who have gone into the prison system, the penal system. And when you have that, these young men come out and their challenges are so much larger than they were going in. Because now you have that strike, that box that, you know, we've eliminated here in the city of Detroit. But it does not. I mean, it still exists. The stigma still exists, and in many situations, I will even say that you know, it's still held against you. So what we need is those guys who have gone through that, and they realize how bad it is, how hard it is, how challenging it is to try to now reform your life and see the difficulties of it. We need them speaking up. Not just to change their situation, but to warn these young boys, look, don't do this because this will lead you there. That doesn't make you a punk. That doesn't make you a chump. That makes you smart because you're doing what it takes to get yourself to the next level. And I'm going to do what I can, young brother, to help you.
And you know, a lot of people don't realize this. People always hear the give and take or the take and take, but when you give, you receive. It's actually a give and give that we live in. And when you mentioned about it's the community, I mean, if you want to live by yourself, go move out, I don't know, South Dakota, somewhere up in, you know, the foothills where you're by yourself. But when you're in Detroit, just being here or in any city, it's you're connected. No matter, if you don't like it, you move out. If you're in here, it's our responsibility to join hands and help each other. It's just part of it. And I believe that's, and I'm sure that's the way God intended it.
John, I talk to people all the time and they say, you know, I don't even know my neighbor. That to me doesn't make sense. Now, you may not always know the folks who live all the way down at the end of the block, but the people who live on the side of you, on the street in front of you, you've got to know them. You've got to know these folks because one, it's a crime deterrent because these are the people who are watching your home when you're gone. But More than that, it's a way that you build a sense of community. And yes, we do have some very challenging neighbors at times.
Times, right.
But we have to look and find out, okay, if
Kind of like
those
family.
aren't the ones. Yeah, well, yeah, that's
And
right.
they are the family,
That's
right.
absolutely. If if the folks who are right next to me, they have issues, well, how about the people on the other side?
Right.
And that's how you begin to create a climate of what will be accepted on your block and what will not be accepted. And again, we've got to do certain things as a government as well. When people call, we've got to respond.
Right.
And we can't respond with an attitude. We can't respond lackadaisically. We have to respond to the needs of the communities. Courts have to do their part.
Absolutely.
The prosecutor's office have to do their part. I mean, so it's a chain, and I've used this analogy before. It's a chain. You have the community, you have government, you have churches, you have all these different entities who are interlocked. And if any link of that chain is weakened, it all falls apart. And that's where we are right now. We've got to identify who or what chain is the weakest link. And if all of them are weakened, we've got nowhere to go. So we've got to strengthen each and every one of them, fuse them together so they will not break apart. Is that going to be an easy task? Absolutely not, because if it was, it would have been done by now.
Right.
But it can be done, it will be done, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to do everything I can, even if there are decisions that are not the most popular that I have to make. And, seeing that I am in this situation, I've been here for 3 years, I've had to make some very unpopular decisions, but it's not about politics for me, it's about making sure that when I leave this place, I've done everything I could to help.
And let's talk about that. You've been here for 3 years now, and you're going into your 4th year. You've had I guess a learning curve, if you will, because everybody would have one coming in here. You had to make a lot of tough decisions.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat. And that's what I want to ask you. When you came in originally, was it what you thought it was going to be? What have you learned since you've been here, and what has been some of the toughest battles that you had to, or not battles, decisions that you had to make?
Well, one thing that I've learned, well, let me go back to your first question. It is what I thought it was going to be.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, because I knew it was going to be tough. By no means, if you come in here thinking it's going to be a cakewalk, you're in the wrong, position, the wrong job. I wasn't one of those folks who were just running because I wanted a job. I needed a job. I ran because I wanted to change, and I knew it was a lot that needed to be changed. So, yes, it is. I just, the pace of it all, when you start talking about reform and change, that is something that I thought would be easier. The involvement with the state, that is something that it did catch me off guard. But we've had to adjust and, as they say in some worlds, pivot our thought process. And there's some decisions, I'll tell you, if it was up to me personally in my own life, and it was me and my wife, we would go back and huddle, and we say, nope, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to go and we're going to take this route. But because I have more than 700,000 people who are looking to me, whether they support me or not, I still represent them. I have more than 700,000 people who are looking for me to do what is in the best interest of their lives.
Right.
I have to sometimes put my own personal, my gut up to the side. Not just go with my heart, but go with my mind and combine those two and look at the facts that are in front of me. And, it gets tough. Again, when we first got here, it was a mass of people who were coming and having issues with, various decisions that we made, and that has not stopped. And again, with the amount of state interaction that we've had over this past year,
It's been interesting.
It's been very interesting. And I'll just say flat out, this consent agreement, that has been without a doubt, that was the toughest decision that I've had to make, because you're in a situation where you realize that if you agree to this this pact, if you will, with the state,
that's a good way,
that you have compromised not just your powers, but the ability for the residents to influence those decisions. But I looked at it, John, and I said, this is in April. That's when we signed off on the consent agreement, April 4th, I believe, early in April. And if we had not done that, by law, The governor was ready, signed, sealed, and delivered. He indicated flat out, it was on paper, we've had meetings, and he was being influenced by the rest of the Republicans and many Democrats as well, outstate. You know,
Okay,
I don't
didn't
want
know
folks
that.
to think that this is just a partisan issue, but this was everywhere.
Yeah, I thought it was all Republicans.
Oh no, it was all around. You know, everyone wants to say this, but people outside of the city of Detroit, they campaign on not being Detroit.
Right.
So when you see that,
That's true.
we just now, and you know, I don't want to time this thing because I don't know when exactly it's going to run, but here we are going into September, and we just got the Board of Canvassers to put this on the ballot.
Right.
And so here we are, we're talking about from April to September, we would have had an emergency manager because once it goes on the ballot, it freezes.
Right.
But that individual would have had the ability to do whatever they wanted to with this city from April up until now.
So in a way, well, and I guess I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, council member, but like you said, pivot, we kind of rope-a-doped, you know, in Muhammad Ali's terms, to keep our strength.
Yeah, well, we stayed involved. We stayed a part of the process, as opposed to taking ourselves out of the process. Because once an action is taken, you can't reverse it. If they were to go in and sell the water department, if they were to go in and sell Belle Isle,
Right.
if they were ready to go in and sell whatever you can think
can't
about,
reverse it?
you can't reverse it because it's done. By law, it's done. So I don't want to jeopardize that. I don't play that kind of game. Because to me, it's bigger. If it was just me and my household, you know, my wife and I will go, we'll huddle, we'll talk about it, and say, babe, you know, let's do this. But I cannot jeopardize the future of 700,000 plus people in this city. It's a lot bigger than that to me. It's not just about pride. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely not. You know, and every day we are forced to make additional decisions as a result of that consent agreement. Do I want to see Public Act 4 repealed? Absolutely. But in the meantime, we still have to determine what are we going to do to solve our fiscal problems, our fiscal challenges that we have. Public Act 4, if it gets repealed, that doesn't solve our problems.
Right.
What that does now is provide us an opportunity to self-govern, you know, once again, completely without the intervention of the state. But it doesn't solve our financial problems. So, you know, as one of the people, you know, I've said, I don't want it. I don't like it. It's undemocratic. It is horrible, I think, for the process, and it serves a horrible precedent. But if not that, then what? And that's where we all have to determine what that solution is going to be. It's not just no. No, we can't do that. Why? Because we haven't been doing it. It has to be no, but here's the opportunity for us to do this, to turn it around. And it's so multifaceted. So, you know, like I said, there's no shortage of tough decisions to be made moving forward. And I look forward to being part of the process. I feel blessed to be here because it could be someone else. But I'm so thankful that this is something that I asked for and I prayed for to be on council. The Lord provided me the opportunity to do it, and I want to make sure that I don't squander this blessing and this opportunity that I've been provided. But you know, the problem is just, again, multifaceted, and it may sound like it's a cliche, but it's going to take all of us to get involved, you know. But the most important thing is that people have got to be educated. If we're talking about problem solving, before we ask people for solutions, you've got to know what the problem is. And many people don't take the time. Here we are, we have Channel 22. You can watch council sessions unedited.
Right. Well,
word for word. You see exactly and hear exactly what members are saying. You see the item. You can come down if you would like.
Right.
But you can save your money and watch it at home.
Right.
And
get educated.
And get educated about what these issues are. Do not get swayed by what the media says, because the media gives you a portion of what is going on. And many times, unfortunately, now with the way that media is, it gives you a slant. And it's telling you what they want you to believe. And it's unfortunate because they're the tastemakers, you know, and they take advantage of that fact. You know, but we have so many different, you know, you have the state saying one thing, you have the administration saying another, you have council saying something, media saying something, you have these special interest groups, you know, whether they're conservative or extremely liberal.
Right.
You have all of this going on, you have all this it's important not to just take what any of these groups say, even council, not just saying what they say as what's being going on. Educate yourself. There's documents. You can go on webs online and find the documents yourselves. There's nothing hidden. Nothing hidden when it comes to what crosses this table. When you know what the problem is, that's when you can begin to identify the solution. So you just can't say it's somebody else's responsibility, and that's what we see a lot that's taking place.
Yeah, and I heard something the other day. I don't remember if it was Joyce Myers because we went to go see her, but all the time, all I listen to her, I'm sure I know you're the same way. This positive information to feed yourself with, and they were talking about people trying to blame other people and blame others, and when it all comes down, the citizens are the ones that are in control. And I don't think I think that it's a lost concept, if you will. The citizens know how much power they have in voting.
And it's not just, and that's the other thing, our clout, if you will, our political clout in Lansing, it's weakened. I hear a lot that, you hear folks bring up the names of the past leaders who've done a tremendous job in the past who are no longer here, one of which being the Honorable Coleman Alexander Young, who we all pay homage to, and he did a tremendous job, and we love his leadership. But times have changed. We now, back when he was here and he was running this city the way that he did and in the fashion that he did, he was able to do certain things that we just don't have the ability to do. I mean, the things he said to the President of the United States, now we certainly wouldn't say that, but he was able to do it because he had a constituency that actually got out and voted. And that created political clout. When you have a governor, and again, not trying to paint anybody good guy, bad guy, just stating the facts. When you have state elections, well, you knew back when Mayor Young was in office, you had to come through Detroit. If you didn't have, because we not only had the population, but we had a voting population, and we could swing an election. So people paid attention to the city of Detroit. This past election, I can guarantee you, even if you're talking about the gubernatorial race, there was a very little influence that Detroit had on that race. And so when you have lost that political clout on that level, and I would even venture to say because of that, we don't have the same kind of clout nationally either. We're the land of the Motor City, but we're not that same. Just in name, we don't have that same clout in that fashion either. Yeah, it's on the rebound, but it's certainly not. The automotive industry is not what it used to be, and the power that we had in terms of manufacturing and industrial, it's not what it was in the past. So you certainly can't completely ignore us in the city of Detroit, but we certainly don't have that clout that we had back then that would force those outside entities, those other powers that be that have tried over the years to do certain things that they're doing now to do. Now, that's not a defeatist attitude, but what that is recognizing the condition that we're in and working with all parties involved who have an investment to try to change the game.
To show our power.
Because we have to redefine what that power is. And our power is the people power. Our power is the fact that we are resilient. We don't give up. Our power is the fact that we are constantly looking at and trying to identify ways to improve our situation. If we don't do that, we're going to find ourselves in the same situation 10 years from now. I don't care who you elect in office.
We're going to find. And the great thing about voting is, and you heard it here from Councilmember Tate about voting, is the great thing about voting is that it doesn't take long. You have tremendous power when you collaborate and become a community. And even if you read at a rudimentary, I guess, level or something like that, you can go in there and see your candidate, see Democratic, see DEM, and you can vote for people that think like you think. We had the privilege of having Martin Luther King's nephew in here, and he was saying that it's, now, and you can listen and you can YouTube and get information from candidates. You can listen to, what your different elected officials, whether they're running for state legislature, city council, or the presidency of the United States. You can find out if they think like you think. But what he said was, we can't just vote for people who look like us now. We have to vote for people who think like us, and that's where, you know, where that comes in, and part of it is usually, not always, but usually Democratic, you know, and if you see that on there. But it's so important that even our youth, once you turn 18, that you get out there and vote. That our people is, now let me ask you this, Councilman, because I don't know, you can, if you've had and I guess I do know this, but if you had a felony, or as long as you're not in jail, you can vote.
You can vote, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, you know, again, there's always these hurdles that seem to come about every 4 years, every presidential election, or they heat it up, they ramp it up prior to the presidential election. You know, then recently it was the voter ID cards. You know, you have to show your ID and the citizenship. You know, that's something that has recently popped up. It's going to happen. You know, but that is not an excuse. Rain is not an excuse. Snow is not an excuse. Heat is not an excuse. There is no excuse. This is a right that has been provided, that we fought for. Right. You know, no matter where you are, no matter what. Where you stand on this socioeconomic scale. We fought for this right, our ancestors did. Right. And we have a responsibility to uphold the blood, sweat, and tears that they shed to get us to this point, and not look at it as an option. Because it's not. Right. You know, it's not an option. Education is not an option. You know, voting is not an option. Being socially responsible is not an option. Taking care of your children is not an option. By law and by nature, these are your children. So, you know, it really bothers me when you see these, you know, these individuals who are pushing the responsibility of transforming our city on those people, that group, that group. It's not my fault. It's not I didn't do it. Well, none of us did it. But we all have to do it. Right. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, just do it, huh?
Have to just do it.
Yeah.
It's our change.
Now, Councilmember, if people want to get in contact with you to talk about any of these issues that we talked about, or any issues that's going on in the community, can you look right at that camera and tell them how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. Always on email. The email is so long, so I hope you guys will scroll it at the bottom.
Yeah, get your pen and paper.
But it has.
And we will.
Thank you. But it is Councilmember Tate. At DetroitMI.gov. Again, very long. But we also take phone calls from citizens and do what we can to work with the administration to address those issues. We've been able to get trees removed from, you know, vacant lots, and we've been able to help get, you name it, we've been able to assist, even actually help get some lights on. We can't do it ourselves, but that's why it's important to have that relationship with the administration. But the phone number you can call, 313-224-1027. Again, 313-224-1027. You can send smoke signals. I don't care what it is. We just want people to get involved. And if getting involved means you just, you know, raise an issue to me, and now it's my responsibility to respond. You know, and I meet people all the time out in the community, and I say, hey, and they see me, and I'm so thankful that I, again, am in this position, and we exchange information, and I never hear from them again.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell them, here's my info. Yeah. You gotta call me, because that's the only way I can follow up on it. So I don't want to hear, Tate's not responsive, he's not calling me. Yeah. Well, look, it's a two-way street, you know. I get emails all the time. Every day I get about, I would say 50 to 60 emails that we have to go through. And, you know, most of them are citizen issues that they have. Most of them are issues that I cannot physically, you know, change myself, but through relationships we can help try to adjust. Some of them take, you know, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. Some of them may take months, but we don't give up on them, because we can't give up on this city. I promised, and that was my vow when I came in here, when I raised my hand, actually even before that, when I decided to run. And over the years, I've seen, again, the change and the slow pace of progress. But, you know, I'm determined that, you know, when the clock strikes on this term, you know, at the end of those 4 years, I want to be able to look back and say I did everything that I could to help make this a better Detroit.
Amen.
That's my goal.
So if you need to get in touch with Councilmember Tate, you have the information right here. Councilmember Tate, can you repeat it?
It's 313-224-1027. 313-224-1027, and that long email is councilmembertate@detroitmi.gov.
Remember, everybody, our power is in our vote. Vote, vote, vote. Councilmember Tate let you know that if we come together as a community, that we can conquer any problem that we come across. So take